the diminutive but extremely effective Spencer Oliver for another hour of boxing chat. And there is Graham saying, Jim, just before you go on, please wish Spencer a very happy new year. Can I do that right now?
Wow.
Very happy new year to you, Spencer, from one of your fans out there.
Thank you very much.
Yes, you have a good one. I mean, when you get back, when did you actually get back from Saudi?
Right, so we landed at 4 p.m. Christmas Eve. Went back, and my wife Nicola was straight away, yep, we've got to go out, we've got dinner with so-and-so, so-and-so. We went out, had dinner, and that effectively done me, because Christmas Day, obviously really tired. Boxing Day, I got sick, and the rest is history.
No.
Run down, Jim. Overworked, underpaid.
It was always going to happen, Spencer, wasn't it? Because of the amount of effort you put in here at talkSPORT to the boxing coverage. In fact, you're pivotal to it.
Mate, I come in again. I was working, I don't know where you was. That was 27th. No, I was in on the 27th.
Oh, were you?
And I was in on the 30th.
Well, it must have been exhausting being in that exhilarating atmosphere in Saudi.
It wasn't as bad as you
Actually,
think.
I mean, Frank Warren was in here. No, he wasn't in here. He was talking to us on Zoom the other day, and we were discussing the atmosphere or lack of it in the arena at the event on the 23rd of December. I mean, to me, and Simon and I weren't saying it for the hell of it, it didn't sound as raucous as it might have been, say, at Wembley or the O2.
Well, we've been spoilt here, Jim. That's why. I mean, you know, we've got a huge fan base here, boxing fans, and we know the British fans, you know, they are the loudest of them all. I mean, look at the fans that followed Ricky Hatton over to Floyd Mayweather, 20,000 odd fans, you know, and they outshone the Americans over there. I mean, that's where we've been spoilt with it. Yeah, the atmosphere was maybe not what we get here, but we've got to remember that boxing in Saudi Arabia has just started. I mean, if you look at it
That's fair.
as a spectacle, I mean, you had the who's who of boxing on there. You know, 10 of the top 15 heavyweights in the world.
Yeah.
You know, we were starting to get the fights that we wanted to see. So, as a boxing fan, I loved it. Yeah, of course, the atmosphere is not going to be what it is here, but you know, you got to give it time.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say one of the big winners on the night, because he did win, was Joseph Parker, but one of the big winners in a variety of different ways. What should be next in the journey for Joseph Parker, do you feel, as some kind of reward for getting the win that he got over Wilder?
Well, I think it was the manner that he beat Wilder. I think that he was a big underdog going into that fight. I mean, a lot of people forget Joseph Parker is only 31 years of age. He's coming into his prime right now, you know. So, yeah, he's had losses on his record, you know, to the likes of Anthony Joshua, where he didn't really put in a performance and people feel that he didn't sort of commit himself. But I think since teaming up with Andy Lee, I think we've seen a new, revitalised Joseph Parker, a guy that believes in his confidence. And we saw that in his performance. I think he met fire with fire. Deontay Wilder was a shell of his former self. You know, I think that Father Time waits for no one. He's 38 years of age. He's had 47 odd fights. He's lost 3 of his last 4. And I think that was evident when you saw that. But Parker he had the perfect game plan.
Yeah.
And he went and met Wilder. So look, what's next for him? I think he puts his name right up there in the mix. I know they're chasing for a fight with Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua's obviously looking, you know, for other fights. I think
Parker's camper chasing it.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. That's the fight that they want.
The thing of it is, Simon, am I right? You were no fan of the first time Parker fought Joshua.
No, I think there's a lot of contributing factors to that. I think Anthony was looking beyond that fight. I think the referee stopped a lot of what that fight could have been. And I thought Parker didn't let his hands go.
He didn't commit himself.
No. And I think it'll be slightly different now. I think that's a good fight, Parker versus Joshua. I think there's a variety of options for Anthony Joshua now, and also, to some extent, for Joseph Parker.
Does Parker deserve a shot at Joshua again after disposing of Wilder?
I guess so, yeah, because everyone built Wilder up to being a beast. And what you got was a fighter that I think went to Saudi because he got paid such a ridiculous amount of money. And I know Frank says, well, they all get paid money. Well, we know that, Frank. But the point is he got to pay such a ridiculous amount of money that he was lured there. And what was left of Deontay Wilder was not a lot.
Yeah.
So Parker did his job because he could only beat what's in front of him.
Yeah.
And he beat him.
He beat a top 3 fighter, to be fair. Like,
On
going
paper.
into that
On
fight,
paper.
on paper, Wilder was, by many considered, at least, you know, in the top 3. So,
Going
you know,
into
Parker
it,
going into it. And like I say, Father Time waits for no one, and Wilder just seemed to get old overnight. It was not just the fact that, you know, he wasn't letting his hands go. There was nothing, there was a fragility about him as he was moving. You could see, like, you know, he couldn't commit himself at all. And I think that Parker just boxed a perfect fight, and he does put his name right up there. But, you know, you're looking at Anthony Joshua and the possible opponents that, you know, he could be facing. People like Zheli Zhang, he's well in the mix there. Philip Hergovich, who's the IBF mandatory. I think that's where Anthony Joshua goes personally.
Well, I reckon because Parker did a job in Wilder, it now makes the likelihood of AJ Wilder somewhat less likely. Certainly Eddie Hearn echoed that on IFL TV.
The fight's dead. I mean,
right now.
Listen, yeah, you never know what's going to happen in the future, but we had both signed contracts to announce the fight that night. So obviously subject to everybody winning. So when Wilder lost, we had to go into the change room with Josh, and he was like, he just lost. I'm like, yeah. So, look, don't worry about that. Go, you do your thing. And obviously he did his thing outstandingly. And the fight's dead for now. Who knows what's going to happen in the future?
The fight's dead for now. I mean,
I think
if we were to see Wilder in a similar vein of form in his next fight, it's most definitely dead. I don't think we see AJ Wilder now after what we saw from Wilder in Saudi, or not so.
No, I totally agree with that. I think that, where does Deontay Wilder go from here? Like, let's say he has a rebuilding fight, he comes back again, he boxes someone in a lesser opposition, and he wins the fight by knockout. Well, a boxer doesn't lose his punch power. That's the last thing that leaves them. Deontay Wilder's still got that punch power, but at a certain level, he won't be able to commit himself. And I think that you look at that now, and I just looked at that and I went, this is not just a bad night, and a guy that's been inactive for, he's had one fight in the last 26 months, and you got to take that into consideration. A 1-round win over Robert Helenius, and I go, no, it's not about that. This is a guy now that you're looking at that has got, the boxing's left him. I mean,
Eddie Hearn is also suggesting, Simon, that next for Joshua could be one of three: Hrgović, Zhilei Zhang, or Ngannou. I mean, the only one out of that trio is Zhang for me.
No, God, no. He's got to fight Filip Hrgović because it gives him a world title.
Yeah.
If indeed it plays out, and Eddie can't say that this is the way it's going to play out because it's forecasting what's going to happen. But if you've got a unification a unification fight, which you have on February the 17th, then what will follow that is people aren't going to be able to meet their mandatory. So someone's going to drop a belt. And the perception is it's going to be the IBF.
Yes.
That's the perception. And Eddie can't allude to that because it kind of suggests that the IBF are the ones that are going to be dropped out as the least valuable belt amongst the three other belts that will be held. The point is then what happens is Hrgović is the mandatory for that. He then has to fight for a vacant title. Who becomes his challenger? The number two. Who's the number two in the IBF? Anthony Joshua. What happens if Anthony Joshua wins that fight, which is a fight that he's more than capable of winning, because Hrgović, whilst impressive in some respects, is unimpressive in others, is Anthony Joshua is a 3-time world heavyweight champion. And
that is the ultimate goal.
And that's what he wants.
Yes.
What's unimpressive about Hrgović?
I think he lacks creativity. I think he's very heavy-handed. I think he gasses quite early in fights.
Stylistically, for Anthony Joshua, Hrgović is a great fight for him because he'll stand in front of him and he'll take the fight to Joshua because he'll believe that he can win that. I spoke to Hrgović out in Saudi actually, and he said, "Listen, that's why I've not given up my IBF mandatory because as soon as that the undisputed fight happens, that title gets relinquished, and I box then number two, which was Otto Wallin at the time." Anthony Joshua obviously won that fight with a 5th round stoppage or retirement. So he takes that spot. So that is the fight that I see happening next. And I see that happening as early as March. They're talking about Joshua boxing again. Eddie Hearn, I think, was talking about it the other day, Joshua boxing again out in Saudi Arabia. March the 9th is the date. And I think it could be for Filip Hrgović for that vacant IBF title.
Okay. I mean, when you look at it, and Simon, I'm going to get your view on this now with AJ. Helenius dispatch, Otto Wallin dispatch. Are we nearing the stage of saying that Joshua is back? He's definitely back.
Well, look, everyone went into this fight making the argument that Otto Wallin was a serious challenge and that there was real jeopardy in this fight. And whether you want to suggest that Anthony Joshua wasn't tested and taken into the kitchen to feel the heat, if you want to be mean-spirited, you can make that observation. If you want to be realistic, he wasn't allowed to. Anthony Joshua didn't let him. Anthony Joshua went in there with far more menace and was far more engaged and far more in range, let his hands go and beat this fighter and stop this fighter on his stall. And this was a guy that went into a fight thinking that I've sparred with Anthony Joshua. I think he's done, full of confidence, and wasn't allowed to deliver anything. Yeah. Now, if you put Anthony in against someone that's going to perhaps execute a little bit better, you might find some of the frailties are still there. But right now, the job has been done. He's beaten Jermaine Franklin unimpressively. He's dealt with Helenius, and people say it took him too long to get to it, but he did it. And now he's stopped Wallin. So I don't know what else. Anyone else, in fairness to Anthony, would be judged differently by this.
You have to look at the improvements from each single fight. You know, when you're talking about Franklin, and then you look at Hellenius, and now you look at this last one against Otto Wallin.
Where are the key improvements?
Oh, the improvements are all about the aggression, the attack, and the self-confidence. The menace that Simon's talking about, and putting his shots together, like Joshua, you know, not committing himself, not stepping in with his foot, throwing the single shots, throwing 1-2 at most. Now you see him go phase 1, phase 2, putting the combinations together. That is the Joshua of old, and that is the Joshua that can take him to a 3-time world heavyweight champion.